Hello everyone and welcome to Dungeons and Death Battles, the series in which we search for the most lethal monsters in all of Dungeons and Dragons. Today we will be smashing our way through Season 4, in which 16 deadly dungeon denizens, as voted on by you incredible arena patrons, will be battling it out to see which one of them is worthy of taking home the CR4 crown. The arena rules are simple, the monsters start 30 feet apart, there is no fleeing the map, victory is achieved by kill only, and outside influence is not allowed. Today's battle seems destined to be earth-shakingly dramatic, with the two-headed giant, the Ettin, taking on the champion of the Dungeons and Death Battles 3rd season, none other than the I-beam blasting terror itself, the sinister Spectator. Behind the scenes, various crews have been prepping their creatures for battle, which has been particularly troublesome this time around, as the Ettin arrived in town backed by a full cohort of bandits, ogres, and a rather mysterious Fey entity. This has of course been noted by our kobold stewards, and we do request that you make sure your belongings are secured prior, during, and after this event. As if that wasn't enough by itself, the Spectator and its not-so-humble trainer Gerbo the Gnome have been amping themselves up for something we've been told is going to be rather spectacular. To combat this, anti-beholder I-beam goggles are available at the concession stands once again, so we do recommend picking up a set of those before combat begins. As always, these pair of dungeon denizens will be going head-to-head for a spot in the CR4 quarterfinals, and while their respective crews make their final preparations, let's jump into a creature combat analysis. Jumping in, we have the Ettin, as you would expect, a physical powerhouse of a creature, boasting an 85 hit point average with a slightly less impressive 12 AC. This lumbering hulk also showcases its strength with a score of 21 and a constitution of 17. Does fall down in other categories, with considerably lower mental stats and slower reactions, with all of its remaining scores coming in at 10 or lower. That being said, the Ettin does pack in the immunities, with the blinded, charmed, deafened, frightened, stunned, and unconscious conditions all being off the table, likely thanks to its two heads, with one taking the slack should the other fall. The most obvious thing about the giant, however, other than its two heads of course, are its pair of equally noticeable weapons, with it being able to swing in with both a crippling battle axe and shredding Morning Star using its multi-attack. These both deal 2d8 plus 5 points of slashing and piercing damage respectively, with the battle axe strike being able to knock a large or smaller target prone, and the Morning Star rending a foe with disadvantage on its next attack roll that occurs before the end of its next turn. Now, while the Ettin is truly a mighty and opposing monster, it faces a champion tonight. And that champion is none other than the CR3 tournament victor, the I-beam slinging Spectator, which was able to blast its way through the competition quite successfully. There have, however, been some changes to how the Spectator operates, with some universal flux causing a change in its very cellular structure as we move from the 2014 to 2024 rule set. The Spectator now comes in with a hit point average of 45 and an AC of 14, and does, most importantly of all, maintain its ability to fly. This aberration maintains a very consistent stat spread, with most falling around the 13-14 mark, with only an 8 in strength and 11 in charisma, bringing these down slightly. That being said, the Spectator is immune to the exhaustion and prone conditions, and can also deflect spells with its spell reflection ability, which it can trigger as a reaction. On top of that, the eye rays return in full force, with confusion, paralyzing, fear, and wounding rays all still being available for use. A key difference this time around though is that the Spectator must rely on the grace of universal RNG to determine which of its eye rays can be used in any given turn, with a d4 roll determining this. The same beam cannot be used twice in one round, with it being re-rolled in the case of duplication. The Spectator still blasts away with 2 eye rays per round. And with all that, it does look like the teams and our in-house kobolds are ready to go, which does mean it is time to roll in for initiative, starting with the Ettin and its -1 modifier. And so Ettin rolling in here, it will be looking to get a flying start towards the Spectator, so rolling in again a -1 modifier to this. And that is still respectable with a 16 -1 for 15. The Spectator does have some catching up to do here as the Ettin digs its heels in and prepares an immediate charge. And with that, we do hand over to the Spectator. It does need to beat a 15 here in order to secure that pole position. Spectator rolling in a +2 to its initiative. And with a 9 plus 2 for 11, the Spectator is going to fall horribly short of the roll that it required. And this does mean that the Ettin will be kicking things off here in this CR4 qualifying battle. And the Ettin, noting its floating target, is going to do what it does best and is going to use its 40 feet of movement to immediately close the gap between itself and the aberration before it, where it will weigh in with 2 melee attacks, swinging across with its battle axe and Morning Star. So rolling in, the Ettin does have +7s to each of these, looking to beat an AC of 14. So rolling in for that first, we are going to be coming through with a battle axe to begin with, and a 10 plus 7 for 17 is going to do it, as the Ettin breaks first blood upon the Spectator. And we'll be rolling in now with 2d8 plus 5 points of slashing damage. So rolling in now to get that first bit of damage on the table, and a 6 and a 2 there for 8, plus that 5 is going to bring that all the way up to 13 points of damage, which is going to drop the Spectator from 45 to 32 hit points. And now with normal conditions applying, the Ettin would have hereby rendered the Spectator prone, but as we all know, the aberration is immune to the prone condition and will thus remain floating where it is. But it's not all over yet for the Spectator, as the Ettin will now be rolling in yet again with another attack, this time coming through with that spiked ball of steel, the Morning Star. Once again, +7 to this, looking to beat that AC of 14. And a 17 plus 7 for 24. Once again, easily breaks through the Spectator's AC of 14, and thus the Eyeball Terror will now be succumbing once more to 2d8 plus 5 points of piercing damage. So rolling in once again, Ettin looking to inflict as much damage here as possible. And as much damage as possible, it nearly has. With that 5 and the modifier for 5, bringing that up to a 10, plus the 8 there for 18 more points of damage, which will be bringing the Spectator further down from 32 to just 14 hit points after that initial onslaught of bloodlust from the giant. And with that, we will be handing over to the Spectator, which has found itself in a spot of bother here. But the creature is going to do what it does best, and in a slight fit of panic, it's going to unleash its eye rays. Of course, all of these targeting specifically and exclusively the Ettin in front of it, the large giant having taken it down far below 50% hit points after just a single round of damage. Now we will need to roll in with a d4 to see which of the Spectator's eye rays get used here, and it is hoping for one of two, Confusion Ray and Paralyzing Ray, which should see it able to get into the rafters scot-free. So Spectator rolling in, now relying on a little bit of luck. And that there is a 1, which does mean that the Confusion Ray has fired off first, a bolt of light finding the Ettin, forcing it to roll in with a Wisdom saving throw. And should it fail, the Ettin will be taking 2d4 points of psychic damage and will be unable to take reactions until the end of its next turn. On its next turn, the target cannot move and uses an action to make a melee or range attack against a randomly determined creature within range. If the target cannot attack, it does nothing on that turn. And so this is a very crucial roll right here. Spectator imposing a DC 12 Wisdom saving throw upon the Ettin, which with a Wisdom score of 10 will be rolling this in with no modifier. So it needs a 12 or more on this roll. Ettin rolling in Wisdom saving throw. And that is a 9 plus nothing, which is going to leave it on 9. Which does mean that the Ettin has here failed its Wisdom saving throw. And will be taking those 2d4 points of psychic damage and will be unable to react until the end of its next turn and will not be able to move next turn. But anyway, first things first, rolling in 2d4 points of psychic damage. Let's see just what the Spectator can do here with that eye ray. And that is a 4 and a 3, near max damage there, which is going to total for 7, which is going to drop the Ettin from 85 to 78 hit points. As the Spectator rolls in yet another d4 to determine which of its eye rays it will be firing off next. And that there is a 2, which means that the Paralyzing Ray blasts in next. And so the Ettin must now make a Constitution saving throw to avoid the paralyzed condition. It does have a slightly higher score in this stat, with a +3 to its saving throw here. Again, looking to be that DC of 12. And with a 14 plus 3 for 17, the Ettin has cleared that save with ease and will be avoiding the paralyzed condition. However, more importantly than any of this for the Spectator, the Confusion Ray has successfully landed, which does mean that the Ettin will be unable to take reactions, and as such, the Spectator will be launching itself 30 feet directly skyward out of range of the Ettin, which is going to simply look around, its mind spinning with colors and shapes as it fails to notice the Spectator leave its combat range. And with that, we will hand back over to the Ettin, which due to that Confusion Ray will be unable to move this turn turn, and as there are no other foes around it to fight, that will effectively bring a swift end to its turn, as we do hand back over to the Spectator, which is once again going to fire off some more eye rays. So get rolling in to determine which ones are going to come through. And that right there is a 4, which does mean the wounding ray fires in first. This one, of course, dealing 3d10 points of necrotic damage should the Ettin fail the saving throw. Once again, this is Constitution, so the Ettin does get a +3 to this. And that is a 14 plus 3 for 17. An easy success once again for the Ettin, which will now be taking half of 3d10 points of necrotic damage. So roll again, 3d10 points of necrotic damage. Of course, this will be halved, which is a good job too, with some pretty high rolls there on those dice, with a 10 and a 9 for 19, plus that 6 for 25 points of damage. Should of course be halved and rounded down to make for 12 points of damage against the Ettin, bringing it from 78 to 66 hit points. But the Spectator does still have another eye ray to roll in with. Let's see which one it gets. That is a 4 once again. Unfortunately, we cannot have Wounding Ray twice. So rolling again. And there we have a 1 once again, which is a Confusion Ray. So once again, the Spectator blasts in with confusing energy. Once again, some more psychic damage will be on the table should the Ettin fail this save. Once again, DC 12 Wisdom saving throw right here. And there we have a 2, plus of course no modifier, meaning that that is certainly not going to succeed. Once again, the Ettin will be subject to 2d4 points of psychic damage, as well as the conditions we previously mentioned, as it will be unable to take reactions until the end of its next turn, or move during its next turn, as it is currently being essentially confusion locked. We roll in again with 2d4 points of psychic damage. And with a 1 and a 4 there, polarizing rolls balancing each other out to total 5, which will be dropping the Ettin from 66 to 61 hit points. And at the end of its turn, the Spectator will be moving further up into the sky, using its 30 feet of movement to put itself 60 feet away from the Ettin, which it does appear is starting to lose control of this combat situation. And as we hand over to the Ettin, it does remain confused, which means it is unable to do anything but merely stand, its heads swiveling as they look towards each other for support, unable to find any in the sparkling confusion that lies between their eyes. And we do, of course, once again hand back over to the Spectator, which now, finding its range, is going to smile with glee as it is simply left to do what it does best: fire off with more eye ray attacks until the job is done. Its confusion ray having proved so strong thus far that it has just been able to pin the Ettin in one spot, preventing it from even using the rest of the arena to climb higher towards the Spectator's position. But the aberration is going to carry on, its tactic paying off for it, and it's going to fire in with yet 2 more eye ray attacks. First one coming through, let's see what we get. And that is a 1 once again. It is absolutely secure in the bag with these attacks. Let's see if the Ettin fails against the confusion once again. No modifier, of course. And a 2. It rolled in with a 2 again, which does mean that the Ettin has failed, which means that yet another turn will be spent doing absolutely nothing as the Spectator simply laughs at its opponent's misfortune, as it deals yet another 2d4 points of psychic damage to its foe, with those falling once again on a 4 and a 3 for 7 more points of damage, which will drop the Ettin from 61 to 54 hit points. As we roll in again to see what the second Spectator eye ray is going to be. And there it is, another 4, which does mean a wounding ray is flying across the battlefield once more, directly towards the position of the bumbling Ettin. Now once again is going to make a Constitution saving throw. Again, +3 to this, looking to be the DC of 12. And it does look like the Ettin's luck may be running try here, with an 8 plus 3 only totaling 11, which does mean it will now be succumbing to the full brunt of 3d10 points of necrotic damage. So yet again, rolling in, Spectator looking to deal some serious damage here, and some reasonably serious damage deal it will, with a 10 plus 6 for 16, plus that 3 for 19 points of damage, which will be dropping the Ettin from 54 to just 35 hit points as the Spectator ends its turn once again, its foe remaining simply confused and disorientated, as we once again essentially skip through to the end of its turn. That lower wisdom score proving absolutely crippling for the Ettin in this matchup, as the Spectator flies even further up into the rafters, reaching its maximum eye ray distance of 90 feet, where it will remain comfortably, showering the crowd with Technicolor blasts as it targets the Ettin and looks to finish its task. The Ettin just absolutely getting pummeled by eye rays as its life force ebbs further and further away. But as is with combat, sometimes it is tough to watch, and the Spectator will once again be firing in with more eye rays. First up, we have a paralyzing ray now, And again, the Ettin will now need to roll in with a DC 12 Constitution saving throw to avoid paralysis. Let's see what it can do. It has to have something left in it still yet. And with a 17 plus 3 for 20, it most certainly does. And it will be resisting the effects of paralysis as a spectator rolls in for another eye ray. And with that 1, that crippling 1, rolling in again, that confusion ray, targeting the Ettin once again, which must now make a DC 12 wisdom saving throw, as we have become so accustomed to avoid the effects of that confusion. And so rolling in flat again here. And it's absurd. I cannot believe it's just rolled in with yet another 2. I'm going to have to wait this dice out later just to double check some things. However, I am certain that it has rolled in with a 2 plus 0 for 2. Which does mean that it has failed a confusion ray save once more, which really just adds on to this battle. The spectator just locking down its foe with those conditions, using the exact same strategy that saw it become the champion of the CR3 season. And this, combined with its ability to fly, is why it has done so well in this tournament so far. But once again, the Ettin will now be eating another 2d4 points of psychic damage, rolling in. And that is a 2 and a 3, therefore 5 points of psychic damage, which will be dropping the Ettin down to 30 hit points. As we once again hand over to a confused Ettin, which, having succeeded on its con save to break Paralyzing Ray, was only forced to later succumb to confusion, again meaning that it is still unable to do anything at all. So we hand back over to the spectator once more. So rolling in, let's see which attack it gets as its eye rays continue to fly in. And there we have a 3, a fear ray this time, one we've not seen thus far. But this will once again be forcing the Ettin to make a DC 12 wisdom saving throw, a save which has been problematic for it in this combat. So rolling in, looking for anything but a 2. And that is a 15 plus 0 for 15. Does mean it is going to succeed against that Fear Ray, which does mean that it won't be taking any damage and will not have the Frightened condition, although it wouldn't have been succumbing to that part anyway, as it is immune to the Frightened condition. Spectator rolling in again, looking to see which beam comes in next. And there's that 1. It does just look like the Spectator is toying with its opponent here. However, the Ettin has just succeeded on a wisdom save. Can it do it twice in a row? This one much more important for it now. It's even worse than it was before. With that 1 plus 0, that's a natural 1. We have a natural 1 right there, which seems rather fitting for the Ettin's performance so far against the Confusion Ray. Does mean that it will absolutely be failing that one too, as the Spectator fires in another 2d4 points of psychic damage and imposes those dreaded confusion conditions upon the Ettin. This has just been absolutely insane to witness. The Spectator just playing with its target here as it rolls in for maximum damage on those 2d4s. Of course, 4 and 4 coming together to total for 8 points of damage, as the Ettin is brought from 30 to 22 hit points. As again, we are essentially forced to skip through once again to the end of the Ettin's turn. Back to the Spectator, full circle, as the mini beholder just lords itself over the arena here, providing a Technicolor spectacle to the crowd as it puts this giant in its place. So again, rolling in. Let's see which I-beam it comes through with first. And that is a 4, which is going to be Wounding Ray. Ettin, DC 12 Constitution saving throw to avoid 3d10 points of necrotic damage. And a 5 plus 3 for 8 is going to mean that once again it takes the full brunt of that damage. No halving here. Can the Spectator finish the job right here, right now, as it looks to deal as close to 22 points of damage as possible? And that is a pretty massive hit right there by itself, with a 10 and an 8 coming together for 18, plus that 2 on that dice there for 20 points of damage, which is going to see the Ettin drop from 22 to just 2 hit points. The Spectator prepares its second I-beam attack, its giant foe having simply been brought so low this combat. What a promising start for the Ettin, but it could all about to be undone here by the Spectator. Let's see which I-beam it gets to roll in with second. And in what could be a very, very fitting finale here, the Spectator has rolled in with a Confusion Ray. The Ray which has been causing the Ettin so many problems this combat. Could it be the one to end it right here? Ettin, DC 12 Wisdom saving throw. No modifier. And a 9 plus 0 for 9 is going to do it, which does mean that the Spectator can now roll in with another 2d4 points of psychic damage, which of course the lowest it can possibly roll here is 2, which does mean that the Ettin will be put out of its misery at long last. This battle turned into torment here during the end. We roll in to see just how much overkill the Spectator will be putting the Ettin through, and that is going to be a 2 and a 4 for 6 6 points of damage. Confusion Ray being the final nail in the coffin for the Ettin, as it drops it from 2 to 0 hit points. The magical energy from the Spectator proving just far too much for the Ettin to handle, and while it did take its time here, it's almost playing with its food. The Spectator has removed the Ettin from the competition, the aberration rising through into the quarter-final round of the CR4 League, once again proving just how mighty the CR3 creature really is, using its combined flight and incredible 90-foot range eye rays to effectively stun lock the competition before burning it down with shredding damage. And with all that, I hope you leave this battle entertained, and I hope you will join me again next time when the Bone Naga takes on the juvenile Shadow Dragon in the very final qualifying heat, the CR4 League of Dungeons and Death Battles, which will be shortly followed by the very first quarter-final round. And with that, if you did enjoy what you saw, please consider dropping a like on the video, commenting down below, and subscribing to the channel. I do also have a Patreon which has some extra behind-the-scenes things going on over there, although as mentioned previously, I am trying to migrate most of the Patreon content over to YouTube just to make it a little bit more accessible. The only thing that will be remaining over there permanently, or until further notice at least, will be the votes to determine which monsters enter the arena for each CR League, as Patreon simply offers far more poll slots, which makes things much more manageable. So Patreon will still be in use around every month or so, and it will still be good to stay over there and up to date with what's going on. And in fact, I do have something special brewing for the next video, something slightly new and different. Again, I hope you enjoy that as well, and I will see you back for that very soon.